As we also thank all of you for being a part of this. Continuing, Mr. Raghav Chadha is the National Executive Member of the Aam Aadmi Party, a young legislator. Mr. Chadha will give us insights into how he perceives the change in the Indian media scenario, the proliferation of digital media and the prominence gained by digital platforms like YouTube, WhatsApp and other news applications and aggregators. Internet becomes the most used medium of news dissemination, and the regulation of the web faces opposition or for freedom's sake. Mr. Raghav Chadha also exchanging pleasantries, set to join us. I'd like to have you on stage, Mr. Chadha, giving us insights on the evolution and changing nature of news. And for this session, I'd also like to invite Mr. Rishabh Gulati, who will join us on stage with Mr. Raghav Chadha, Mr. Rishabh Gulati, Managing Editor, NewsX, in conversation with Raghav Chadha. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause for our next session.
He's the youngest MP in the Rajya Sabha. Let's give him a bigger round of applause. Regardless of politics, it's a life achievement, and he's going to be around in politics for a very long period of time. Raghav, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a very unique experience because my thanks to the chairman of NBF, the vice chairman and the entire committee, that we are an industry where we have a service to perform. But as an industry, we have many common issues. And it's great to see a lot of stakeholders have come together, including Raghav Chadha. So Raghav Chadha, now you've been a national spokesperson for your party for very many years. How has your relationship and understanding and experience with the media evolved from then to now?
Look, I would define my relationship with the media over the last one decade of my being in public life as kuch khatta, kuch meetha. It's been a mix of both. And the journey started when I was, I think, only all of 22 or 21. When at that point in time, I didn't even get a full beard. And news anchors as well as co-panelists never took me seriously. So from that day to being a member of parliament in the upper house has been quite a journey. And I think I have also seen media over the last one decade evolve and change. Whether it's change for the good or change for the bad, that is of course something that's up for debate, and the jury is out on it. But the relationship has, as I said, has been khatta meetha. There have been times when media has been indulgent, media has been impartial, independent, objective, and there have of course been times when media essentially, vis-a-vis our case, and I'm speaking from personal experience, performs the duty of not that of a watchdog but that of a bloodhound. And I've seen, I think, both extremes, both sides of the spectrum. Yeah.
But Raghav, you know, having watched the evolution of the Aam Aadmi Party, it's literally a revelation that has happened in the past decade. But there was once an energetic activist, Arvind Kejriwal, who was given a lot of exposure by the media. And it's the media who amplified his causes and did make a contribution to who he is today.
Look, there have been times in this country where pressure groups and social movements have got a lot of attention of the media. And that section of media, most certainly, that represented the sentiment of the people. And as a result, of course, since you refer to my leader, Mr. Kejriwal, as an activist in his earlier avatar, of course, during the India Against Corruption days, there was reportage and coverage around the movement and the cause of the movement. And that was primarily because it resonated with the people. It was something that the people also felt that was being echoed. And the cause of the movement met the cause of the people. However, when we became a political party, and let me disabuse you of this notion, we received perhaps the first and the worst media blackout. In our 49-day first government in the year 2013, you would remember, and if we were to rewind back to the December of 2013, you would find that my leader, the Chief Minister of Delhi, at that point in time, had registered an FIR against a leading industrialist of this country. He had shot off a letter to his anti-corruption branch, and a FIR subsequently was registered. As a result, that leading industrialist, who's also a big media baron, ensured that Aam Aadmi Party and the government of Delhi is blacked out from the media. So the 2015 election that we fought was despite the media blackout and in spite of no media coverage. So despite and in spite the media, through sheer grassroots support and political electoral hard work at the ground, we could come back with the highest ever majority that any political party has received.
Well, in a democracy, that's what matters. But it's an evolutionary thing, as I'm sure the party's been evolving. What is your assessment? Is there a neutral media? Is there a right, left, and center of media? But overall, does it give a balanced approach?
Look, to say that there is a section of media that is tilted towards the left, there is a section of media that is tilted towards the right, etc., essentially showcases that rather than putting facts, events, and news, opinions are being put forward. And as a result, having opinions is also not a bad thing. Every journalist can have an opinion. Every newsroom can have an opinion. But when that opinion, unfortunately, transforms into indoctrination, that is where the problem begins. And when agenda is driven, when propaganda is unleashed with the intent of indoctrinating people or manufacturing opinion at the mass level, that is where the problem begins, and that is what I feel a section of media is practicing today. However, some are left, some are right, some are centrist, and therefore there is a balance I don't agree with. Today, you have a particular ideology and a particular point of view of the government at the center which enjoys brute majority. And as a result, they wish to impose that ideology and their views on a large section of media, and for them to carry that point to every nook and corner of this country. My only submission here is that media should not become a carrier of the government line. Media should reflect the public sentiment and not toe the government
But
line.
Raghav, doesn't it cut both ways? Because, you are the opposition, or at least the challenger in some of the states, but you're also incumbent now, you're government in 2 of these states. So does that not change? Is it just perpetual opposition or complaint against the media with the center? What about your governments? You also are in government now.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we witness both sides. When we are in opposition in states, we witness, as I say, the role of the media, and also in 1.5 or 2 states where we run successful governments. However, the larger point, Rishabh, is that today, rather than being a bloodhound for the opposition, it is important to be the watchdog for the government. I mean, we are not in power at the center. People who are not in power are being blamed for, issues like inflation, unemployment, so on and so forth, or transgressions by foreign countries into the Indian territory, rather than the government. So therefore, I think it's high time that a section of media, which is practicing a different kind of journalism, needs to speak truth to power.
No, there's no doubt that your positioning has evolved, and the party is maturing in a different way. But there is opposition, and then there is opposition for opposition's sake. That just because the central government is doing it, we need to be critical of it. Is there a role in the media that if something good is happening, that as part of Team India, it should be able to applaud the good as well as
No, absolutely. If anything that is good that has happened, certainly the opposition and also the national media and all platforms of media must be constructive and appreciative of that. There is absolutely no doubt. And opposition for the sake of opposition is something that I personally and my party personally doesn't believe in. For example, I'll give you a recent example, of recent past. When the Prime Minister launched the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the first Chief Minister in the country or the first political party to wholeheartedly support as well as participate in that abhiyan was my leader, Mr. Kejriwal, and my party, the Aam Aadmi Party. So therefore, if there is a constructive policy, something good is happening, it's incumbent upon us, on the opposition and on the media, to participate in that and to take the word forward. However, it is also important for a large section of media today to introspect. And I feel, as somebody who's been in opposition for a fairly long amount of time, who's been at the forefront of national media also in that sense when I have to represent my party, that a section of media is only looking for gaps and pitfalls for the opposition and not for the government, which was not the case previously. It is not, you certainly should correct the opposition, but those in power, those who control the levers of power, are more accountable and answerable.
No, the introspection is open to media for sure, for political parties. Your logics and strategies evolve, and I'm hoping evolution takes place on all fronts. But, let's just change the tack, because media bashing has become a very common forte. It was perhaps during the first few days of the COVID lockdown that, as a country we realized that you can't wait on Twitter, you can't wait on a YouTube explaining video 1 week later, you have to watch live news. And there was a purpose and a role that was being served. So with the advent of the new generation of media, this concept of live TV and its importance, have we reinvigorated it a bit?
TV media is here to stay. TV media is certainly one form of media that has a potential to influence the minds of a significant part of our population, and the penetration of TV media is only increasing in this country. During COVID, of course, TV media played a very constructive role in the sense that they were able to drive home the awareness points vis-a-vis a pandemic or a raging pandemic. And that was certainly one of the biggest utilities of national media, and I certainly applaud all sections of media for that matter, for their constructive role during COVID.
Okay, so now, Raghav, all parties, perhaps better than the media industry itself, yours and others, you have extensive social media teams and a social media outreach. Yet some of the worst excesses, both named and unnamed, happen on social media. Yet it's TV media that's generally bashed, but social media, criticism doesn't often come from politics.
Look, social media is a completely unregulated form of media. It's a place where everyone is free to express one's opinion. As long as people are using parliamentary language and are not crossing the line of decency, I think every opinion should be welcome. And I would say that while all of us are in public life, even editors, leading journalists like yourself are also in public life. And therefore, just the way we are open to criticism, journalists must also be open to some form of criticism.
Yeah, but I think it's something that we're all trying to understand. Raghav, let me take on the other tack, because I've seen in my career the evolution change in political parties. There was a time when you spoke to political leaders personally and invited them into debates. In TV channels, it's become centralized, and even in political parties, I think all, bar none almost, have become centralized. Oftentimes, it is junior spokespersons. Very rarely do we get to interact with members of parliament representing their parties on TV debates. I know the number of channels is increased. And in the centralized places, sometimes the party is not represented, the party is boycotting certain channels. How do we then have an effective debate if the parties themselves don't provide people who can make and argue their point well?
Look, first of all, I think parties that have a centralized mechanism of assigning spokespersons and panelists for several panel discussions and debates is a very good form of management, I think, and it is purely done by parties, particularly by my party, for optimum utilization of manpower of spokespersons, so that everyone, every channel or every platform where we are invited, we are adequately represented by an able spokesperson, number one. Number two, with those who become senior and those who get promoted, there are new entrants in every organization that must be given an opportunity to perform. And just how you have new anchors and new TV personalities coming up in your news channels every now and then, there are political parties where people join and they perform, and some outperform, and then they progress. As far as access of journalists to politicians is concerned, while senior members and MPs, so on and so forth, may have limited, some of them may have limited their media interactions. But that doesn't mean that the access of journalists to politicians or members of the government has reduced. I think that access is pretty much intact. It has perhaps only increased over the last few years.
No, but it's up to us to increase the quality of our debate, and it's also up to political parties to empower us to increase the quality of debate. And obviously, some people can argue the point better, but I know my time here is short, Raghav. In essence, what is the job that you perceive of media? Are we supposed to just be critical of government, primarily central government, or is there a constructive nation-building role also to be played here?
Without referring to being critical of central government or being favorable to opposition, let me say this, that it is incumbent upon media today to put forward news and not noise, to put forward sense and not sensationalism, to put forward journalism, not jingoism. And unfortunately, a large section, and I'm saying this without hesitation, that a section of media today, unfortunately, has, from being a journalist, has today become a propagandist of the government. There's no point in becoming a cheerleader of the government, because once you do that, while you may enjoy certain brownie points with the powers that be, you are deteriorating your own credibility. And as a result, just how people, Rishabh, in this country used to say, and perhaps say this even today, and that led to the formation of a new political startup, a clean, upright startup like my party. That perception was कि नेता चोर हैं, सब नेता चोर हैं. Now that perception is slowly moving towards media बिका हुआ है, media बिका हुआ है, media बिका हुआ है. And you hear this very often when you interact with the people at the grassroots level, कि जी media बिका हुआ है. So therefore, I think it is extremely important on your part, on the part of NBF and several media agencies and outlets, to course correct and to ensure that this idea or this notion that people today have
no doubt introspection is good, but it's the political parties only who say, no, media bika hua, and convince their followers. But I know we are out of time. There are sessions planned. I know you have a flight to catch. Raghav, Chadha, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big round of applause. Thank you very much for taking a few straight questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you, Raghav. Rishabh and Raghav, thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, just want to give a loud shout out to the official broadcast and technology partner for this event. They are LiveView and Lamhas. LiveView is the #1 choice for the live news and dynamic sports coverage by almost all broadcasters worldwide. A little bit about the News Broadcasters Federation. Hardeep Singh Puri, before that, ladies and gentlemen, Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri just entering the venue, should be inside in a few minutes from now. Please stay seated. I request all our panelists to be seated. Kindly be seated before our next guest. The News Broadcasters Federation, ladies and gentlemen, is India's largest news federation with over 55 members. It's the only news body with maximum representation from regional broadcasters across the length and breadth of India. Now, the NBF and all its members are united in their commitment to ensuring that news media must truly serve as a strong pillar of our vibrant democracy. Now, the NBF, in sheer membership numbers and beyond them, has ensured unparalleled representation from news broadcasters across languages and regions of India. Now, NBF is also the first body of broadcasters in India that truly represents the vision and concerns of regional, vernacular and national media that constitute the changing face of media in India. Now, the aim of the body, that is NBF, is to ensure that the united voice of broadcasters across regions, languages are heard and solutions are sought in a way that further strengthens news broadcast in India. And as we wait for our next panelists to come up on stage, I request all our guests to be kindly seated. A lot of movement at the back, especially. Can I request everyone to be seated, please? Can we please ensure that the hall is settled before we have our next panelist on stage? A quick reminder, ladies and gentlemen, after this session, we will be breaking for lunch. After this session, after Future of News Building India Battling Fake News. That's in just a minute from now. Hardeep Singh Puri, the Union Minister, will be up on stage. It's a session moderated by Mr. Arnab Goswami. And after that, we will be breaking for lunch. And a reminder that after the lunch, we have Himanta Biswa Sarma, the Assam Chief Minister, joining us on the stage today. And we have a series of discussions lined up for the second half, compelling conversations on the future of news in India. So I request all our panelists to kindly be seated, especially those near the door. If I can request some of our guests to kindly enter the hall and settle down, please. We need the hall to be settled so that our next panelists can come up on stage. Can I request our guest coordinators also to ensure that everyone is please seated? Please take your seats so that we can get the next session started. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, while we wait for our next panelist, I'm requesting all our panelists to please take a seat. All our guests in the auditorium to please be seated. And can we please close the door so that there is no movement there, please? Let's close the door. And everyone, especially at the back, and I request some of you to please be seated. And please do keep quiet, maintain silence while panels are on so that there is no disturbance on stage. We're just waiting for our next panelist to come up on stage. And a few audio visuals of our partner networks up on screen now as we wait for Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri to join us, please.
Change is brewing in India. India is building up like never before. Buoyed by an unprecedented need for it during the pandemic, the news media in India is observing a healthy churn like never before. The discerning news consumer is happy to embrace emerging options. The regulatory landscape is open to evolving. The advent of global big tech is changing dimensions of the news industry. Reimagining the revenue streams, relooking at regulatory policies, building cohesive news ecosystems. These are pressing conversations. The News Broadcasters Federation is India's largest news federation. The News Broadcasters Federation is committed to being a strong pillar of our vibrant democracy. And that is why it is time the News Broadcasters Federation brings you the first edition of the NBF National Conclave on the theme, The Future of News.
We will be joined very shortly by Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, who will of course carry on the conversation on the future of news. In fact, the theme that Mr. Puri will be speaking on is Building India, Battling Fake News. So very, very important session, Suyasha, that of course Hardeep Singh Puri will be speaking on in a few minutes from now. Remember, he of course is the Union Minister who is in charge of building the new parliament, of course building urban centers of excellence, and that's why of course he will be speaking on Building India, but he'll also be talking about the menace of fake news, battling fake news. This is something that is much talked about, particularly before elections, during elections, and this is something that the Union Minister will be shedding his wisdom on as well.
Absolutely, and in fact, this is one issue that is most talked about when it comes to tackling with fake news, not just on social media, but even otherwise. It has resulted in some very, very untoward incidents that has rolled out. And in fact, the insights that most of the ministers and politicians who have been on this stage or there are sharing today when it comes to tackling news, when it comes to the future of news, and when especially the next session that we are looking forward to. I'm being told that the Union Minister will arrive here any minute now. And as we wait for him, of course, it's been a very interesting round of sessions since this morning, because also the media is standing at a very important juncture in the day and age that we are, and some very, very pressing issues are part of the News Broadcasting Federation, extremely important. And once again, to reiterate for all our viewers there,
Yes.
that 40 channels is where these discussions are streaming live since this morning as we talk.
Absolutely, which is why we're creating ripples as we speak, not just, of course, as I told you earlier, broadcasting in Delhi or in the north of the country where we are coming to you from, but from the east to the west to the south, this is being telecast there. These conversations, of course, and remember, are not just going to remain mere rhetoric, but are actually translating into action.
Yes.
As we speak. Session after session, we have seen commitments of change, commitments of collaboration. The NBF founding president, Arnav Goswami, said earlier too that the NBF is going to get to work